The New Extraordinary Spider-Man. Chapter 4. Turning Point. 14 days ago, the world had survived the invasion of the Putties. Now the world was trying to move on from the event. During the invasion, our heroes and villains had to work together, but after they saved the world, they continued with their own journeys. Logan sat on the grass hill, watching the plane fly away, getting smaller as it flew further into the distance. Amelia was on that plane. The King of Wakanda had granted some of the students across multiple universities across the world to go there, and the students got to do some history lessons about Wakanda, the city, the culture, and of course their leader, the Black Panther. The trip was for 6 weeks, which meant Logan was left one friend down and Spider-Man was once again riding solo for a little while. Logan watched until the plane was out of sight. Then he climbed to his feet and headed into the city. He climbed into his suit and started web swinging around the place. May as well get some Spidey time in, Spider-Man muttered to himself. He swung around over the streets of New York, when suddenly he saw the police cars zooming down the street. Well, due to calls and all, Spider-Man grunted. Then he web-zipped after the police cars. He landed on a street lamp and watched the police open fire on Captain Cold, who was blasting them with ice bolts from his cold gun. Spider-Man jumped off the street lamp and landed between the police officers and Captain Cold. Alright, let's all chill out and get some freeze pops, Spider-Man joked. Yeah, of course you're here, the new Captain Cold grunted. Well, you are playing on my turf and all, Spider-Man chuckled. Captain Cold aimed his cold blaster and blasted an icy beam at him. Spider-Man flipped to one side, dodging the attack. The beam hit the police car, freezing the door solid. Now that was uncalled for, Spider-Man mocked. Then Spider-Man shot a web and pulled himself forward, throwing himself at Captain Cold. He threw a punch, punching the villain in the head. Then he jumped up and kicked Captain Cold in the chest, making him stagger back. Captain Cold aimed his cold gun at the ground and pulled the trigger, and a large explosion of ice erupted from the ground, forming into ice spikes. The blast threw Captain Cold backwards, at the same time causing Spider-Man to jump back, avoiding getting pricked by the icicles. Captain Cold then found his footing and ran off. Spider-Man jumped into the air and started swinging after Captain Cold. He saw Captain Cold running down the street. He shot a web which hit Captain Cold's back, then he pulled himself and flew at Captain Cold, smacking him with all his body weight, both of them crashing onto the road. Okay, bad move. Ow, Spider-Man grunted as he slowly climbed to his feet. Captain Cold stood up and glared at Spider-Man. Then he turned around and saw the delivery truck driving towards him. He aimed his cold gun and shot a single icy blast, and it hit the truck head on. The truck swerved all over the road and then tipped over. The momentum threw the truck into the street. People screamed and started to panic. Spider-Man jumped into action. He jumped into the air and webbed 2 civilians off the ground just in time. He then made a web net big enough to stretch between both sides of the road and dropped the 2 individuals onto the web net. He shot a large web which hit a civilian, pushing them off the street, smashing through a shop window. Then he jumped onto the sliding truck. He grabbed onto the passenger door and yanked off his hinges and tossed the door away. Then he reached in, grabbed the driver, pulling him out of the truck and wrapped his feet in web. Then he shot a web onto a building which pulled the driver away out of harm. He hung there swinging on the spot. Spider-Man jumped off the truck and launched himself down the road. He could see the truck coming straight for him. The road now was on a decline, giving the truck more momentum. Spider-Man stood there and shot as many webs as possible, making a wall of web. Then, as quick as he could, he popped the empty web cartridge and quickly pulled out new ones from his belt and loaded them in. He then jumped over his web wall and landed behind the truck, and he shot 4 webs. All of the webs stuck to the other end of the truck. He then pulled the webs with all his strength, trying to slow the truck down. His feet slightly slid across the ground as he tried to pull the truck with all his strength. Finally, the truck came to a stop, leaning into the web wall. Spider-Man let go of the webs and dropped to the floor. He could feel his arm muscles pulsing. The surrounding crowd burst into cheer, clapping and calling for Spider-Man's name. Spider-Man waved at the crowd as he stood, and then he looked around for Captain Cold. He was nowhere to be seen. He shot a web and pulled himself into the air and landed on one of the roofs. He dropped to the floor, leant against the big box fan, and then he pulled off his mask to catch his breath. JJ stood in the gym, his boxing gloves on, and he was striking the punching bag over and over again.
Why are we not trying to kill Spider-Man?
Venom hissed in his mind. 'Cause Spider-Man ain't doing anything right now. I have to train, man, JJ snapped.
You were supposed to help me get the new Spider-Man.
Venom roared. And you're supposed to help me win, remember? JJ barked back.
If you aren't going to help me, I will find someone who will.
Venom growled. Then suddenly the symbiote ripped out of JJ's body. JJ's body went all limp as the power of the symbiote left his body. JJ dropped to the ground and struggled to stand. Wait! Don't leave me! I need you! JJ cried out.
That may be so, but I do not need you. Goodbye, JJ.
The symbiote hissed as the black slime like alien slithered away. JJ tried to get up, but the overwhelming loss of the symbiote caused him to pass out. Logan sat in his mother's hospital room. She has been in a coma due to the injury she received during the putty invasion, when suddenly Hunter burst into the room. Hey man, Logan asked, confused on why Hunter had barged in. Hey dude, JJ just got brought in, Hunter told him. I'm coming. Logan nodded. He kissed his mother's forehead, then ran out of the room and followed Hunter down the hall, where JJ laid in the room unconscious. His boxing coach and mother sat in the room. Hey, what happened? Logan asked. The boxing coach pulled them to one side and explained that he had found JJ unconscious, laying on the ground in the gym. There was no sign of any struggling, no sign of a break-in, and on top of that, according to the doctor, he had extremely low heart rate and all his body levels were extremely low. Critically low. The coach managed to convince JJ's mother to get up and go get a cup of coffee, leaving the two boys with the unconscious JJ. You're scaring your mother, man. Come on, snap out of this, dude, Hunter said to JJ. Come on, man, you gotta fight to win, Logan told him. Hunter then let out a long sigh. He pulled out his vibrating phone out of his pocket and checked it. Give me a minute, bro, my parents are flipping, Hunter moaned as he walked out of the room to call his parents. Suddenly, Logan's spider sense started to tingle. Then, it started ringing in his head. He shook his head, trying to shake the tingling feeling away. He then looked over to Hunter's bag, and his spider sense intensified. It became numbing. He walked over to the bag and made sure that Hunter wasn't about to walk back into the room. Then he opened the bag and saw Captain Cold's visor inside. Logan quickly zipped up the bag, back up, and stumbled backwards, his mind suddenly racing. Logan suddenly had a lot of questions. Was it a coincidence that Hunter had the visor identical to Captain Cold? Or did Spider-Man unknowingly just fight Logan's friend earlier that day? Hunter then walked back into the room. Okay, so my folks were more worried about JJ than me. Typical, huh? Hunter chuckled. Yeah, Logan replied awkwardly. Logan then stood there not knowing what to do. Hunter started talking to the unconscious JJ once again, as Logan stood there with his spider sense ringing in his head.
What you have just listened to is a product created by the Three Ranger Bros Studio.
Hosted by three cosplaying fathers who
happen to be massive geeks of all sorts of fandoms.
They are Mark, the Red Cornish Ranger,
Cosplay Dude 637,
and Tai Tiger.
The studio covers different types of YouTube videos, TikToks, podcasts, and live streams.
If you wish to find out who cosplays who, the YouTube channel, the TikTok accounts, and the podcasts, and all of the other social media platforms,
please go to the 3rangerbrostudios.com.